Welcome, everyone. I'm Colleen Samuels, Executive Director, DRMAC. Thank you for attending today's educational offering, which will be on Alzheimer awareness. But before we get started, Diana and Stephanie are going to go over some housekeeping items.
Thanks, Colleen. Just like we've been going over in our past meetings, I'm going to go over some basic Zoom functions. To mute and unmute, click the microphone icon on the bottom left-hand corner of your Zoom. If you'd like to access the chat, you can click the speech bubble icon located on the bottom middle of your Zoom window. And we can go to the next slide, please. There. Oh.
All right, and if you haven't done so already, please go ahead and type your name and organization in the chat so we can keep track of who's here. As always, you can use the chat as needed for questions and comments, anything like that. And you can also use the raise your hand function to be called on. We will have time after each presenter to ask questions. And then if you're able to, we also ask that you leave your camera on as it helps with communication, and we love seeing all your faces. So now that we've gotten all that housekeeping out of the way, we're going to go ahead and hear from the team and do some staff updates. And Latoya is going to kick us off with that.
Thanks, Stephanie. My name is Latoya Pranti. For those who don't know me, I'm the Program and Development Manager with DRMAC. And my update currently is that our volunteer recruitment is going really great. We're getting a lot of volunteer hours in and a lot of help. And I'm really excited to see what comes from that. And so that's kind of what we're working on. Plus, of course, all the travel training that we're doing in person. So I'm really excited for that. Stephanie?
Yeah, so I'm the program manager of special projects here at DRMAC. I oversee the travel training program and the Getting There app. And just like always, we're still encouraging everyone to sign up for our travel trainings. Our in-person trainings are in full swing. So I encourage everyone to either sign up for a virtual training or an in-person training. And we're also continuing to do some outreach for our Spanish trainings. So if you know anyone who's interested in those, please let us know. And yeah, Maria.
Hi, my name is Maria Griffin. I am DRMAC's Administrative and Marketing Assistant. I am also one of the voices in the Information and Assistance line. We are present in all platforms like Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. I am currently working on growing our social presence in all these platforms, and please make sure to follow and like. There you can find our latest news and information and updates like our in-person trainings for the month of July and August too. Holly.
Hi, my name is Holly, and I'm the Program and Training Assistant here at DRMAC. Diana.
Hi, everybody. My name is Diana Castro, and I'm the Operations and Outreach Coordinator. This right now is, I'm sure you've all heard, is Zero Fare for Better Air for RTD. So to help support and to do some more outreach for, riding the bus more often, DRMAC is going to do 4 in-person trips at 4 different light rail station, park and ride stations. So our first trip is going to be this week. We're going to the Golden RTD Park and Ride. It's at 100 Jefferson County Parkway. Our next trip will be from Littleton to, and all these trips will start at a park and ride and end at Union Station. At Union Station, we will be going around and showing individuals how to get off the platforms, how to use the ticketing booth, one that's up and running, and have any other questions that might, that people might have about how to use the RTD system. And then in August, we will host an additional 2 trainings. The next one will be August 10th, and that will be from the Central Park and Ride. And the last one will be from Thornton at the Crossroads on 104th, and that will be on August 24th. If you know anybody that would like to join or you'd like to join, we'd love to have you. Latoya and I will be in person on the light rail. I speak Spanish, so if you have any Spanish speakers, that would be great. And Stephanie will be on the concourse and will be answering questions. So we're so excited to see everybody. And now, Holly.
I already went.
Oh, you already went. I'm sorry. Okay. Well, thank you all, everybody, for those updates. Now we're going to move on to our first presenter, and that's Brenda Garung from the Alzheimer's Association. Brenda, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Diana. Well, hello, everybody. I am Brenda Garung. My pronouns are she, hers. I am a longtime volunteer with the Alzheimer's Association, and I've worked in senior living for a long time. And so my specialty is around Alzheimer's and dementia in general, and with a specific focus on frontotemporal degeneration. So Diana, I'm going to share my screen, and then can you confirm, or would you like a half hour more or less?
Half hour is fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
beautiful. Thank you. So for everyone,
I just stopped sharing screen, so you should be able to share yours.
thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay. And let me find you all once more. Okay, perfect. Okay, beautiful. I have lost your pictures, so I'm just going to try to find that quickly, and if not, I will just see you with my mind's eye. Okay, well, I lost you. That's okay. I will keep a close eye on the chat as we go through. If you have particular questions, or if something jumps out at you, or something isn't clear, by all means, let me know. And we're going to do a truncated version today. This is the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's and dementia. I think what is most impactful in this workshop is that I think often when people hear the term dementia or Alzheimer's, they think of memory loss first. And that is sometimes, it is often a part of the dementia journey, but not always. And there are many other warning signs that are common factors in Alzheimer's specifically and dementia generally. So as we go through today, I'm going to skip through a few slides. Don't worry about anything you're missing. You're going to get the bulk, the meat, or the tofu of the presentation. For you all and your constituents and any other groups you may be involved with, the Alzheimer's Association offers a ton of free resources in live webinars like this, as well as live in-person sessions and pre-recorded versions on the Alzheimer's Association website. So I'm skipping through this because I wanted you to be able to still see, you know, the objectives, etc. And I'm going to skip through some of the videos and I will play others. But a common question that arises in many workshops is, what is the difference? Alzheimer's and dementia, are those interchangeable terms? Are they different terms? What is it? So for our purposes today, dementia is a general term. It is actually not a specific diagnosis. So maybe you have someone in your own family of choice or your personal life, and they've told you, I have a diagnosis of dementia. That's actually not a diagnosis. That is like me saying to you, Diana, I have cancer. You don't know what specifically. So dementia is a general term. It's a collection of symptoms. It is like saying cancer, or it is like saying, I'm going to have soup for lunch. You don't know what type of soup. The most common specific diagnoses are Alzheimer's disease, frontotemporal degeneration, vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, and Parkinson's related dementia. And I'm going to say about a sentence about each of them. But for you all and for your constituents, it is important that somebody knows their specific diagnosis, because Though everybody's experience in their diagnosis is different, each specific disease tends to have some commonalities. So Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia. It is described by formations of naturally forming protein plaques that form in the brain, but with Alzheimer's disease, they tend to expand and clump up, and they cause the neural network connections to die. Alzheimer's disease can occur at younger ages, and you may have heard of young onset Alzheimer's, which is Alzheimer's at the age of less than 65. Alzheimer's disease and often common symptoms are impacted short-term memory, personality, the ability for the brain to operate. Vascular dementia is associated with blood loss to the brain or strokes. And so what's important with vascular dementia, unlike the other dementias, is you'll tend to see a stark change in ability following stroke events. Whereas the other dementias, you'll tend to see a more steady decrease in ability. With vascular, it's almost like this stair-step change. Frontotemporal degeneration is the most common form of dementia for younger people. It can occur often in people's 40s. And so FTD has a different impact because it often impacts people when they are at working age or when they have young children. And what is important and different about FTD, there's a few different presentations, but it impacts the frontal lobe, and that is your executive function. It is where you make decisions. It is where you filter things. So my neighbor hates when I wear this dress, but my neighbor filters that, and they instead say, oh, I love how you're wearing your hair. But if their frontal lobe is impacted, they might say, ah, that dress looks awful on you, and have you gained weight? And oh my gosh, you look so old. It's that impacted filter. So consequently with FTD, often we will see impacted personal relationships first, because individuals don't recognize these changes and these symptoms as a form of dementia. And they simply think, gosh, my neighbor has really become a jerk, or my partner or my person is saying things that are so mean. Lewy body dementia and Parkinson's related dementia are quite similar, though the order or the path of the disease tends to be flipped. So with Lewy body dementia, you will have the dementia symptoms first, and later in the disease journey may experience muscle and bodily symptoms similar to what you might see with Parkinson's disease. And Parkinson's related dementia is the opposite order. So you first see the muscle and bodily impacts, and later in the disease journey, you may see a dementia. Both with Lewy body and Parkinson's related dementia, there's often, not always, but often hallucinations and paranoia as well. So I give all of that explanation just to give you sort of a framework of the most common dementias and just the terms we're talking through. So I'm going to pull up the 10 warning signs, and these are specifically of Alzheimer's, but some of these are also common in the other dementias as well. So why don't you feel free to unmute or put in the chat, what is one that jumps out at you or seems surprising or makes you curious?
I feel like the most common one that we all kind of notice is the memory loss.
Yes, exactly. So let's talk through that one first. I mentioned at the beginning that there are a number of free resources through the Alzheimer's Association. If you get excited about this workshop or you have more questions than what we cover today, you can see a pre-recorded version in full on the website, which is alz.org. But maybe your personal group or you all would like other sessions as well. There are sessions on helping individuals to prepare for the tough conversations related to dementia. So I see Jill is associated with Drive with Confidence.
Yep.
I don't know if that means drive, but in this particular workshop, conversations, it will talk through ways to address the driving conversation, for example. There are workshops on healthy living, on communication practices, etc. And the Alzheimer's Association also has a helpline that is personed 24 hours a day, every day of the year, multiple language services, TTY, and it's a good resource, whether it's you and your own network or your constituents. So I wanted to make sure to give you all that resource. So, memory loss that disrupts daily life. And that's really the key to this warning sign. If I could see you all, I'm sure I would see some of you raise your hand, you know, who lost their phone this week, who misplaced their keys this week, who forgot either where they left their vehicle or their bike, or is sort of navigating how to find that RTD stop. All of that is super common as we age. What is different and what we're looking for as a warning sign is memory loss that impacts daily life. So I'm going to give you a couple examples that bleed into other warning signs. But maybe so in my personal life, I make, there are a few things I bake. I don't bake much. I make cornbread and I make a squash pie. And I just sort of make it out of my heart. But if I make it for Diana, and instead of salt, I put just a little bit of sugar and a ton of salt, like I flip the ratio, or I put baking powder instead of baking soda. I really don't know which is which. I put whichever one I'm not supposed to. And you're like, oh, you know, you can sort of see where I know the routine, I remember the steps, but I get mixed up. So it's like close, but not quite, is something to watch for. Or maybe I've gone to the same pharmacy for the last 20 years. I know the way there, but now I'm starting to get turned around. Maybe that's not alarming if I've always had a poor sense of direction, but we're looking for memory loss that impacts daily life. Let me pull the signs up again. Somebody else, unmute or put in the chat. What sign jumps out at you?
Something that I find I didn't realize was number 9, withdrawal from work or social activities, because I think that could be an indicator of some other things as well. I didn't realize that it was an Alzheimer's.
Yes, I'm so glad you gave the perfect intro right there. I think often people don't realize this can be a warning sign. And what you just said, you tend to think of this related to other scenarios. So the good thing to keep in mind here, some of you right now are sort of going through the list and you're thinking, oh, you know, I'm seeing a few of these in myself or in my person, and now I'm worried. So I guess the hopeful news, or the news as we look through these 10 warning signs, if you are seeing some of these in yourself or in your person or in your constituents, the Alzheimer's Association would encourage you to get those checked out with your primary physician, because some of these things may be rooted in other scenarios that can be fixable. So you may be seeing these things and thinking, oh, now I'm wondering if my person does have dementia. It could be, or it could be rooted in something else. So nutritional deficits, dehydration, delirium after a surgery or after anesthesia. Depression can mimic these symptoms. So if you are seeing, sort of checking the box and thinking, oh, these may be rooted in other things. So withdrawal from work or social activities. You may find that your person has always enjoyed going to the faith community, and that's a regular part of their life and their practice and their week. But you may find they're sort of pulling back, and you may find they're giving you clues like, oh, I don't like that new faith leader. They talk too much, or it's too loud there, or I never recognize people anymore. They may give you some reasons or some insights why they don't want to attend, or they may just simply pull back and not be as interested. And some of this is rooted in, very often in the early stages of many of the dementias, our person may find it harder to navigate group settings. So maybe it is the faith community, maybe it is the coffee group that gets together Wednesday mornings and they talk and tell stories and gossip. And maybe your person is having a hard time just sort of keeping track of everything. Like the conversation is too fast and there's too many people talking and the noise. So withdrawal from work or social activities, especially those things your person has enjoyed, that can definitely be a sign. Someone else, what jumps out at you?
My dad gave up crossword puzzles and reading.
Yes.
And that really upset us siblings because those were two things that he loved to do the most, and he just stopped.
Yes, yes, that is a great example. One item of hope is that even if somebody pulls back from something they've enjoyed, or even if right now we're thinking, oh, my mom has always enjoyed working in her wood shop, but now that she's in her dementia journey, she can't do it. She can't manage the saw. She can't keep track of the measurements. She can't. I would encourage all of us. There's a practice that I have developed, that I teach in my workshops, that is called finding the root. And it's this idea that maybe our person is unable to do the thing they've enjoyed to its full extent, but we can find the root. We can find sort of that spark of what our person enjoyed and can still do. So maybe you say, my mom can't work in her wood shop anymore, but maybe she'd enjoy sorting out the tools. Maybe she'd enjoy just being in the space and flipping through those old scraps of wood. We can still find that joy in that beloved engagement. That's a great example. Someone else, what jumps out at you?
I just wanted to comment on that really quickly, Brenda. So I used to be a CNA and I worked a lot in the memory loss area,
Yes.
and one of the things that we experienced was sundowners, and that came a lot with Alzheimer's and dementia, right? And so one of the things I noticed too is like really talking with the family and seeing, like you said, what they're used to doing, just to really help calm that, because they are nervous and they are unsure and they do get agitated. And so I found that by asking the family what they did, and like you said, implementing that into their life and just trying to get them to encourage to just play around with things really does help. And there was a situation where we had a sundowner and she wouldn't really, calm down, but she was a housewife. And so she always cleaned. So getting a water bottle, just water and a wash rag, and let her wipe down the tables. I mean, she was whistling, folding laundry, right? We would get a basket of laundry and let her, and then she went to sleep. So, I mean, things like that is really important too. I think with all this is really involving the people around them.
Yes, I could not echo that more. we'll talk about in my work, finding those engagements that are meaningful for people and making sure we're facilitating that. So you gave an example of that particular resident who enjoyed, spray cleaning, folding the towels, etc. When I have dementia and live in a community, don't have me fold towels, right? It's not going to go well. But do have me help the maintenance team member, or to straighten up the garden, or finding those things that are purposeful to those individuals. So we don't have a section, a specific tile specific to what you just said, but we do around sundowning. But we do have a few of these, especially in challenges in planning, trouble understanding visual, difficulty completing familiar tasks, changes in mood and personality. It's very common for what she mentioned was sundowning. So in the later part of the day, kind of when the day sort of flips over, so late afternoon, early evening, earlier in the winter when it's dark, you may find that your person or client does well in the morning, but in that kind of 4 o'clock time, they're kind of sharp, kind of quick to irritation, quick to suspicion, just kind of amped up. And that's really common in many of the dementias. This sundowning occurs kind of when the day flips over, and it's a time of increased frustration or confusion. Like you had shared in the care community, you may find a person is like, okay, it's time for me to go home, or it's time for me to go work. They sort of are used to that change of the day. Someone else, what do you see in any of these? Or what sparks a question or an idea?
Difficulty completing familiar tasks. My grandma, she used to start putting her shoes on the wrong feet, like flip them. And that used to curiously always happen during the evening on her evening walks. She'll put the shoe on the wrong fit, and like to pay attention, because she will blame it like, oh, I'm being silly, but she wasn't being silly. Something was going on. To pay attention to those little things, maybe.
Excellent. That's a great point. So difficulty completing familiar tasks. In particular, you might see this where the task is complicated, like I described when I make that squash pie. It's so many steps. Or if I'm going to take a shower, gosh, there's so many steps to taking a shower. I turn on the water, I take off my clothes, I have the soap ready, a shampoo, I soaked up, I rinse off. So you may find with your person or your constituent that if you just tell them, for example, your person, you tell them like, hey, Dad, why don't you take a shower? And he goes in and you see he's not really doing the thing, or he's doing part of it and not all of it. And that ability to multi-stepped processes or sequencing can often be impacted by the dementia journey. Now, sometimes, especially families or families of choice will be like, oh, now I got to do all this for my person. But that's not the case. We can sort of come alongside our person, and maybe it's enough just to give verbal instruction, break down those steps. Maybe in your example with your grandmother, it's how we lay the clothes out. So maybe we lay the clothes out in order, underpants, then pants, then brassiere, then blouse, so that our person can simply put them on in order and doesn't mix up the order themselves. So great example. Let's take 2 more that jump out at you.
So my mom is currently trying to get a conservatorship over my great aunt.
Yes.
And I think is the struggle. I guess it would be number 10, because the more we try to explain to her that she needs this system, the more angry she's getting. And like, I could pay my own bills. I'm going home tomorrow. And so it just, yeah, my mom's feelings get hurt often, but just trying to get her to understand that she's just in a different place right now, and that she doesn't mean to be so mean.
Yes, that's a good example. And specifically for your family and anybody else who's thinking like, oh, that's us too. That workshop called Dementia Conversations is a good one. And there's another one called Managing Money. And it sounds like kind of a narrow workshop, but Managing Money also addresses getting the legal paperwork in order. So whether that's a conservatorship, like your mom with your great aunt, or power of attorney or some other documentation, but good, clear steps to get things in order, that will be really helpful. So changes in mood and personality, and I alluded to this when I talked about frontal temporal degeneration. I said a little bit when we talked about Lewy body dementia and Parkinson's related dementia. You may find that a person is more paranoid or suspicious or accusatory. You know, I misplaced my purse, but I blame Stephanie. Like, Stephanie, you're always taking my things and putting them in weird locations. Stephanie's like, that wasn't me, you know. So sometimes you have this change in personality as well. Sometimes we inadvertently amp up our person in how we communicate. So there's a great workshop on communication strategies. And the 2 nuggets I'll share with us today is that a good best practice when communicating with somebody with dementia is to slow down. Make your sentences, like, think of your sentence before you speak your sentence. Make it just short and clear, and then pause and give your person time to hear you, think about what you're saying, think about what they want to say, decide what they want to say, and then say it. Like, it can take a long amount of time for our person to process and respond. And sometimes we jump in to try to rephrase or say it louder, right? As if that's going to help. And we end up derailing our person. So changes in mood and personality. Let's do one more. One that jumps out at you.
Let's say confusion with time and place, or place.
Yes, confusion with time or place. So I want to highlight 2 examples. The first one, it is very common with dementia in general, Alzheimer's specifically, in the mid to late stage for a person to become more, this is my language, emotionally rooted at an earlier time in their life. So maybe my uncle lives with me, but maybe he's more emotionally rooted when he grew up on that farm in Nebraska, or when he worked at the plant, or when he used to take the train to work, or whatever imaginary scenario I'm making up. And so if I try to like pull him into my reality, no, uncle, you moved in with me, like, I can't convince him. I can't give enough explanation and logic to pull him out of that space where he is emotionally rooted. So a good best practice is for us to simply join our person where they are at. The Alzheimer's Association will say, focus on feelings, not facts. If my person is so certain they see themselves at an earlier time in their life, I'm not going to be able to pull them into mine. And better that I just join them where they are. Doesn't mean I lie to them. It means I just interact with them in the space that's comfortable for them. The other example with confusion with time or place, so you may find your person or your constituent, you say, you make an appointment with a constituent Thursday at 3:00. You write it on the thing, give it to the constituent, and then I'll be damned. Like, every afternoon now from today until Thursday, your constituent's at the door, like, it's time for our appointment, it's time for our appointment. Or they get the day and night flipped. Or they show up early in the morning and they're mad at you because you're not ready. So this sort of like difficulty with scheduling or difficulty finding the location, super common. I want to highlight one in particular, and then we'll pivot to sort of a invitation or a call to action and whatever questions you have. This trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. This is one I emphasize a lot because I think often people aren't aware how often this is connected with the dementia journey. So you may see it if your person is still driving or your constituent's driving, and they, maybe they're always a conservative driver. Now they come up to the stoplight and it's like, it's like they don't realize until they're right there, or have difficulty sort of keeping track of everything around them in the, physical space. Sometimes even in the later stages of the dementia journey, this is my layperson's way to explain it. It's almost like our person is sort of disconnected from their body, like not recognizing where their body begins or ends. So visual and spatial relationships can be an important warning sign. So I said I'd give a call to action. Definitely, if you are seeing these in yourself, in your person, if you're seeing these in a constituent, I would encourage you to help those individuals get help, get to their primary physician, to the clinic, to get checked out. Sometimes these are real fixable things. Sometimes they aren't, and they are a form of dementia. But if that is the case, better for us to know now, build up some systems and support rather than to kick the can down the lane. So that's my session. Any last question or comment? Helpful, not helpful? I see you all. I'm so excited again.
Any final questions for Brenda?
Well, I don't. I'm
Oh.
sorry. Who did I interrupt?
Tracy, you go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to say I don't have any questions, but I definitely appreciate this. I work with the 62 and over community, so it definitely gave a lot of insight on some of the things that I do see. So I just want to say I appreciate it and thank you.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you for your work. Maria.
I was reading that the number of people with dementia in the US will triplicate considerably within the next years. So I wanted to know, what do you think that could be a reason why?
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, in the US, globally, the numbers are just skyrocketing. There's been a lot of discussion around risk factors, and a lot of what we've always known about heart health seems to be impacting brain health. So there's a workshop called Healthy Living, and people will always be like, how do I not get it, right? So you want to have healthy living habits. You want to take care of your heart, get good sleep. So there's a big correlation between healthy sleep and healthy brain. So even when our bodies are in good sleep, they're in REM sleep, our brain will flush toxins, which include some of those naturally forming plaques that tend to clump up with Alzheimer's. So there's a bunch of studies around like healthy living and our increased risk. There's a lot around trauma and stress and our increased risk for dementia. So there's a lot around, socioeconomic factors and our increased risks. So we're just seeing these exponential increases. Also too, which isn't often discussed, is that we're doing better awareness in programs like this and helping people to realize what the warning signs are. And so people are catching them earlier, but huge increases. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we move on?
Is there anything that we can do as a community to help?
Yes, good, Diana. A few different things. Encouraging those healthy habits, so important. So the Healthy Living Workshop kind of breaks things into 4 quadrants, like healthy living, healthy nutrition, movement, exercising our brain, and social interaction. So much of the work you all do helps to benefit individuals in the sphere of Alzheimer's and dementia. The 2 I want to highlight are the social interaction. The social isolation has been shown to significantly increase risk for dementia, as well as, just as an aside, hearing loss. Not addressing hearing loss can really impact, because it becomes a form of isolation. The thing that often people will ask about, like exercising your brain, like I do crosswords, is that enough? You want it to be hard for your brain. So if you can do it in your sleep, like that's fine, enjoy it, but it's not stretching your brain. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you. That was a very helpful presentation.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. So next we'll hear from Jill Kelly from Drive with Confidence. I'll pass it off to Jill.
Hi, my name is Jill Kelly, and Colleen, now you've made me worry who else has heard my same speech. So I apologize if you have heard me speak before, but maybe I'll take home something different from this presentation.
It's a good presentation. You're fine.
I am a certified driver rehabilitation specialist, a CDRS, and I can see I didn't. Typos make me crazy, and I see a typo on my first slide. So when we speak about things, we call ourselves driver rehab specialists, DRSs. I am an occupational therapist with extensive training in driving safety. I assess driver safety and knowledge in a vehicle. It's my vehicle that has an instructor brake. I have special mirrors so I can see what's going on behind us. I have equipment to teach use of hand controls or a left foot accelerator, in addition to some other adaptive equipment. We just try to meet people wherever their needs are and think outside the box. I do provide input to help medical providers make a recommendation regarding driving. And I know there's a lot of doctors used to make recommendations on driving just from what they saw in the office, and allowing somebody to get in a vehicle and actually do the driving makes them feel like their skills are, of course, better tested. One of the very big things that we'll focus on today is to provide the documentation needed to ensure that you are following the rules and laws of Colorado and the Department of Motor Vehicles. Next slide, please. All right. The biggest thing I want everybody to remember is Colorado is a self-report state. What does this mean? Nobody knows it's a self-report state, but as a driver in Colorado, it is your obligation to tell the DMV of any medical condition that could affect your driving. By documenting this concern with the DMV, you're putting yourself on level ground with all the other drivers liability-wise. If you don't document, and if you have memory issues, and if you've had a stroke, there's all kinds of things. And if anybody starts digging into your medical records and find medical diagnoses that you have not reported to the DMV, then you can be held liable. It's kind of like driving without a license. You can be charged by the state, and you're just not following all the rules of Colorado. Diana, can we look at one of those forms? Because I'm thinking this might be a good time.
Yes, give me a moment.
Open up the 2401. Sorry, guys, I have some. I didn't want to include these because I didn't think they would show up very well. Okay, so this is the form that we're talking about. Can you guys see the full page? Because I can only see about half of it.
Is that better?
That made it bigger so we can see less of it. So do
Oh.
the minus instead of the plus. Okay, and you guys, this is kind of, so do one plus. Okay, so can you roll it up a little bit so we can see more on the bottom of the page? All right, you guys, this is a form that the doctor completes to document disabilities, diagnoses, limitations, anything like that. You can see down here, down on the bottom, the top is just your basic information. You're fine, Diana. So keep going, scroll down. This examination date, you have to have seen, the doctor that completes this form has to have seen you within the last 6 months. So basically what this means is somebody can't document that you're safe or unsafe for driving if they haven't seen you in a while. So that's a really important thing. They document, are they your primary physician, any of those kind of things. They're going to document your medications, right? Could your medications affect your driving safety? So you see at the bottom, current medication, they're going to check that box and then keep scrolling to page 2. Page 2 is the most important thing. Okay. So you can see, we'll come back to this in a minute, but if you look under cognitive, so kind of in the, yeah, you got it. Thanks, Diana. Cognitive, cerebrovascular, and neurological. Look at the little things that are in here. I mean, how many people would qualify for these? Probably most older drivers. Confusion, disorientation, memory loss, forgetfulness, impaired judgment. And then there's all the very specifics that Brenda was talking about: Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, frontal temporal dementia, just some dementia. You can see on here, this is where you would document that somebody had a stroke. That's what the cerebral infarction or stroke is going on there. So you can see these are some pretty simple, not simple, but they're diagnoses that a lot of people would qualify for. If you look down in the second section, Diana, so it's respiratory, there's sleep apnea is in there, diabetes is in there, COPD, anybody that's using oxygen, all of those things need to be documented with the DMV. If you go down to the next, you can see the musculoskeletal, neuromuscular, and you know what, I'm sorry, on the top, there's Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis is in the top under cognitive. It's also down here under musculoskeletal. But this would be maybe if somebody has an amputation of an arm or a leg, or simply weakness following a stroke. And then, you know, there you got your MS and your Parkinson's as well. And then the very last section is psychiatric concerns, addiction, emotional concerns. So look what we have in there, you guys: depression, bipolar. I mean, there's some pretty, I mean, if you guys understand this, literally most older folks are going to have some diagnosis that would qualify for this form. All right, Diana, let's go back. We'll go back to my presentation. We'll come back to this, you guys, and I want everybody to see what that form looks like, because I think it's educational and surprising to most people. All right. How do we know that Colorado is a self-report state? Each state does their own thing. Colorado does not allow our DMV record, our motor vehicle record, to be combined with our medical record. So that is why, because they don't combine these records, they're saying you need to report all your medical concerns. In some other states, these records are combined. So when you show up at the DMV, they can say, oh, it looks like you spent 2 months in the hospital. Is that going to be a problem with your driving? Anything like that. Most folks don't know that Colorado is a self-report state. The DMV does ask you one simple little question. Do you have any medical diagnosis that would preclude you from driving? And if you say no, then they leave it be. If you are trying to renew your license online, sometimes this question comes up and sometimes it doesn't. So it's just, this is something that people don't know very often. So this would be my one thing. If you're going to take away anything, even if you don't fully understand it, you can find me. Just know that Colorado is a self-report state, because sometimes that is enough. If you're trying to tell somebody they shouldn't be driving anymore, that we need to report it. Sometimes reporting things to the DMV will make them decide that they don't want to be driving anymore. All right, next slide, please, Diana. There are 3 things that you can do to prove to the state of Colorado that you are safe to drive. The first one is a clinical driving assessment, and I'll go over these specifically. I hate to say pen and paper, but that's there's pen and paper tests. There's things on the computer. We look at reaction time. I'm looking at your visual acuity, some of those kind of things. So clinical assessment is one. The behind the wheel or on-road assessment is number 2. And then completing the DMV form. If you complete all 3 of those, and when you do that, a professional like myself says that you're safe to drive, that's as good as you get with the state. You have done everything you were supposed to do to prove to the state of Colorado that you're safe to drive. Next. So this is the clinical or pre-driving assessment. So as I said, we look at vision, right-of-way knowledge, I give them situations where 3 cars come to the intersection and they need to tell me which one's going to go first, which one's going to go second, who has the right-of-way. I look at everybody's medical history. I look at their medications, as we saw on that DMV form, make sure that they're not taking anything that would directly affect their driving, maybe make them drowsy. My folks that have Parkinson's, sometimes they'll drive only when their medicines are in peak times, but they won't drive right when they take their medicines, and they'll be finished driving before their medicines run out. So the medications are very important. We'll challenge people with their road sign knowledge. I talk to family and the drivers and ask about the concerns that they have. I have multiple cognitive tests. Physical function, do they have the ability to look over their shoulder? Can they, reach for the shifter, reach the steering wheel, back pain, leg pain, any of those kind of things, any limitations. We look at their reaction time to get from a gas pedal to a brake pedal. And then I look at their driving history, right? Is this somebody that's had a clean driving history, or is this someone that was maybe kind of an unsafe driver anyway? If they pass all of this, then I complete the behind the wheel assessment with them in my car. Next, please. There's 3 companies in the state, I guess 4, one I don't know very much about. 3 companies in the state that have certified driver rehab specialists. One is on 83rd and Federal in Westminster. One is in Littleton on Broadway and Santa Fe. And then me, I am the only one that comes to someone's house. And I felt strongly about this because I think that lends itself to be successful, right? Like, where do you leave every day when you drive your car? You leave from your house. So I come to their house. That's where I do the clinical tests. I get to spend some time with them. They get to know me. I get to know them. I ask them to pick several destinations of their choice. So you know what? It might be the bank. It might be their daughter's house. It might be the synagogue, any of those kind of things. And again, they drive my car. And I have generally seen enough of their abilities that I have an idea of what to expect when we're on the road. So here's the things that I look for. Do they have any troubles operating the vehicle? I have troubles now, which is, I think it's funny to me, but I still have keys. My car has keys. And people go, my car doesn't have keys. And I'm like, no, but for probably 50 years, you use keys to start a car. So I have to make them think outside the box a little bit. Visual assimilation, are they able to take in all the information that they need to from the signs that are out there on the road? So can they read the sign, interpret the sign, and react to the sign in the quick time that's needed? What's their judgment? Are they making good judgments? Are they being assertive? Are they being aggressive? Are they being too slow, which also can be very safe? What is their ability to anticipate other drivers? And I would tell you, you guys know now, after COVID, Denver driving is just crazy. It is, there's so many people that are fast and unsafe, and trying to anticipate them is hard for me, much less hard for folks that are used to people abiding by the rules. I do look to make sure that they follow the rules of the road. So we're looking at speed limit, speed, merging, not if they get in a right turn lane that they make that right turn versus going straight over and not following all the rules in the signage. One of the big things, and this would match with Brenda, and a lot of the folks I drive with have dementia, just their ability to regulate their emotions. And everybody gets frustrated with all the other drivers, and you have to figure out how to separate yourself and remain calm and continue to drive safe. Are they distractible? Right? Is this somebody that if I talk to them, their speeds decrease by 15, 20 miles an hour because they're trying to process what I say and manage what's going on, with the road? And then pathfinding abilities. They may say, first I go to the salon and then I go to the bank. And I'm going to see if they have the mental flexibility to go to the bank and then to the salon. So I throw in, we head someplace and I go, oh, you're going to have to turn right here. And they go, no, this is not where I turn right. And I said, well, we're going to pretend it's a construction zone. And I want to see your problem solving abilities and see if you can find a different way to get to one of your destinations. Next, please. Payment. Driving assessments are not covered by insurance. They're covered. The only time they're covered is for workers' comp. And then sometimes they are covered for voc rehab if we're trying to get somebody back to work. But as a general rule, they are not covered by insurance. It is fully an out-of-pocket expense. The things that I need in order for someone to do a drive with me is I need a prescription from either an MD, a PA, or a DO. And the reason I need that is because only an MD, a PA, or a DO can complete that DMV form. And that's one of the most important things. That's kind of the thing that closes the loop. So the physician gets to choose whether you need both the clinical assessment when we're looking at cognition and reaction time, or if you maybe just simply need the on-road assessment. Maybe you're a diabetic with a new amputation and we just need to make sure that you're still safe, or you're using a left foot accelerator or something like that. And then all of the results, of course, that I gather get reported back to that doctor or the physician's assistant. I also ask for some medical history, list of medications as we've talked about, and then any specific concerns that the doctor has. Sometimes this is a place where the doctor can relay family concerns, because it's really hard when I'm meeting with people. It's very hard for the families to be straightforward, when their mom's there and they want to say she's a scary driver, and that's a hard thing to say. You also must have a valid driver's license. It doesn't have to be a Colorado driver's license. I can still do the assessment, but whatever the results of the assessment are, you're going to have to follow up with, if you're coming from Oklahoma, then we have to follow the rules of Oklahoma, and you may have to find a doctor in Oklahoma to fill out the forms. So only the doctors here in Colorado can fill out the DMV forms, but I can still do assessments and figure out if folks are safe to drive. Just because they don't have a Colorado license doesn't mean I won't see them. And if anybody, I'm not looking at the chat, I'm sorry. Is there, okay, we're good. All right. All right, go on, Diana. Recommendations following my assessment. I might say, if I'm working with somebody that's had a stroke, I might say, you know what? You didn't do so well today, but why don't we go back and you can work with your speech therapist or your OT maybe about some visual scanning, or your sense of midline, or maybe it's a physical therapist because they have diabetes and the sensation in their feet isn't very good, so they were really heavy on the gas pedal. So sometimes I'll send people back to their therapies with specifics. And then I work with, I'm like, here's the troubles that I saw. Here's what this person needs to do in order to be more safe to drive. Sometimes I simply spend some time with them to remind them of the rules and the laws, and just to get them kind of back on track. I find that a lot of the older people I work with, they look at me and say, I've been driving for 60 years and I've never gotten a ticket. And I say, well, yeah, we want to try to keep it that way. But they forget some of the rules. Everybody has habits that they've been, stuck with for a while, and they need reminders for that. And most of the people that I work with, I'm like, you remember you're not supposed to cross solid white lines? And they go, I forgot about this, or I forgot about that. So sometimes it's just bringing people up to speed, reminding them a little bit, getting them out. I call it the autopilot, and I would bet everybody that I'm speaking to, you could get in your car and drive home and get in your driveway and go, I don't even remember driving home, because it's just, you just kind of get in the car and drive. But if you're older and your response time isn't very good, maybe it's the beginning of dementia, things are not as sharp as they used to be. Driving needs to become a very thoughtful, conscientious process. So no more autopilot. You just gotta think about what you're doing when you're in there. I'm sorry, recommendations, right? So we got, I send you back to your therapists, work together for some training. There's all kinds of restrictions that I can put in place, which are on that form. We'll go back and look at that a little bit. Some of the restrictions include no highway driving, no night driving, a speed limit restriction, right? I could say they're safe at 45 miles an hour, but shouldn't be driving over that. I can say they're safe driving 3 miles from their house, but no farther than that. Or I can recommend driving retirement as well. And it's the same, the recommendations and the DMV form is where I would document any adaptive equipment, which would then be recognized by the state and documented on your driver's license. The biggest to do with recommendations, and I would have to tell you the doctors probably take 95, 97% of my recommendations. The physician always has the final say, regardless of what my results are. So somebody could do well with me. I just had this happen. She did very well with me, and the doctor said, I just simply can't. I can't let her drive. So, but the doctor has given you an opportunity to try to see how you do behind the wheel. Next slide, please. So what does a CDRS bring to the table? Help your medical provider make the best and safest decisions. Decrease the family's burden. I mean, how many of you guys know stories about, I disconnected my mom's battery, right? Or I took my dad's keys and I hid them so he can't find them, because nobody wants to tell somebody they can't drive. So they do all kinds of covert things, which then causes distrust in the family and some of those kind of things. It's an objective assessment, and it's much easier for me to help if we have a life-changing decision where we're saying somebody shouldn't drive. The objectivity that I can bring to the table just kind of helps to take some of the emotion out of things. I will also help navigate the state requirements. And for some folks, just the driving assessment, if they know they're doing okay, but they just want a baseline for how they are, and maybe it's the beginning of dementia, and we can say, okay, here's where you did in this year, and if I see you next year, we can see if there's been some declines. So those are the pros of certified driver rehab specialist. Next slide, Ms. Diana. And that's me. That's me and my company, Drive with Confidence. But Diana, let's go back to that 2401 page, please. All right, let's go to the top. Just page 2. I'm sorry, the top of page 2. Be more specific, Jill. Okay. On the left, there's a square. Diana, can you see that? Recommended license restrictions. Go further left. Yep, right there. So there's daylight driving, no highway driving. Yep, here's all the restrictions that I spoke about. And then with the very, very large parentheses, must choose one. We can check fit to operate a vehicle. And then the doctor can check 20 of the boxes below, right? This person has diabetes. This person has had a stroke, anything. But as long as the doctor checks fit to drive, then they're fit to drive. This is also the form, you can see the not fit to drive, which is where we would check if we felt that it was time for driving retirement. This form that we're looking at, guys, go back to the top of page 1, please, Diana. This one is called it's a confidential medical exam report. So this is if you have any medical limitations. Can you pull up 2402 for me? This one is a confidential eye exam report. The state of Colorado has requirements, visual requirements that you need to meet in order to drive. If you have been working with an optometrist or an ophthalmologist, they can override those restrictions, and they document, and you can see, just slowly scroll through this one, Diana, you can go down. This one's much easier. It's not nearly as complicated as the other one. So here's macular degeneration, a visual field deficit. So what if somebody only has vision in one eye, any of those kind of things. So this, the eye doctor fills out. And this would be the same. Instead of a medical limitation, it would be a visual limitation, and this would be documented with the DMV as well. So this one's just a simpler form, but you see the same. Here's your restrictions. You guys see the restriction box: daylight driving, no highway driving, and then same thing, fit to operate and those kind of things. But we have an optometrist that says, I believe this person is safe to drive. Then I'm going to show you one more form, the 2870. Oh, sorry guys, that's not what I was thinking it was. Okay, disregard that form, but I do want to tell you, if you know of anybody that is 80 or older and they are renewing their license online, they now have to get approval from an optometrist to say, yes, they have met the visual requirements of the state, and then they can renew their license online. So what this form that you're looking at is incorrect, Diana. I'm sorry, I pulled up the wrong one. But this form says eye exam for people aged 80 or over. And that's new, started in January. So that's something you guys might know that might be helpful. I have talked, and I didn't give anybody chances to interact. Any questions?
I have a question. Do you, let's just say you found that they aren't really okay to drive or continue to do that. Do you kind of refer them to like giving up the keys and that transition? Like, how does that work?
I would, so I am not the final say. The doctor is the final say, but I can say, I do not believe you're safe to drive. We'll present the paperwork to the doctor. If the doctor says, I agree, they're not safe to drive, this is where things like Dr. Mac and some of the other, I mean, this is where I don't have a lot of resources, only because I drive over the whole city and a lot of the driving resources are county related. Latoya, so does that answer your question? So if you know of any place where I can direct people, I talk about go grandparent, because most of the people that I work with are older. But if anybody, I would appreciate any information that I could hand over to others, so that when they do stop driving, they have alternative transportation options.
Yeah, we've worked with somebody in the past and we've actually done a training. So I'll reach out and look for that information and get it to you.
Okay.
I know we've done that before and we've gone through that training.
Okay. All right. Did anybody learn anything new?
I have a question. I would like to know, how is the process of after the doctor already said that you cannot drive? How do we make sure that person is no longer on the road? Because sometimes a lot of older people does not have family members around to kind of
right.
take care of them and keep them away from the road.
You're absolutely right. So if the doctor signs the paperwork, I send it to the DMV. The DMV sends a letter that says your license has been revoked. And it will say, usually they'll say, you can come in and get a Colorado ID, and it'll give them, in the next 10 days or something like that. But there's very inconsistent follow through with that, Maria. You're absolutely right. This is so I won't meet, when I'm finished with my drive, I make sure that a family member is present. So I would say it kind of rests on the family, but as a general rule, most of the older folks, when they get something from the government that carries a lot of weight, they kind of follow, they'll follow through with something that comes from the DMV versus listening to, what I might have to say. But, and then some of it is just, you try to educate them that they are no longer a legal driver in the state of Colorado. They are no longer covered by their insurance, right? Like sometimes just the financial ramifications of getting in an accident, right? Where, you're driving without a license. And if you do so, and you hurt somebody or, gosh forbid, killed somebody, they could take everything. So it is there's no final, we try really hard. I mean, I had a woman, the doctor took her license away, and you know what she did? Why she still had her license in her hand? She went and rented a car because she could. It's hard. You just have to do whatever you can do within your power. Remove the car, remove the keys, just try to make sure that they don't have access to a car. And then if they're really tenacious, they'll find another car to drive, and you got to figure out how to educate folks around them that they are no longer legal to drive in the state of Colorado.
Hopefully that's where Dr. Mac comes in. We're like, look,
I know, that's what Colleen said. Yeah, which is perfectly fine. Yeah, I just need, and Dr. Mac is all over the city then, right?
Yes, we're all in the 9 metro counties.
Okay, all right, and that's where I am. So no, and I just had a couple that have been stuck, that really, really wanted to get to spaces and places and couldn't figure that out. But I do really try to find an answer to their transportation problems.
Yeah, I felt like if whenever you get that letter that you can no longer drive, your license is being revoked, if you have also some additional information for transportation, maybe it could make that transition easier. And for a lot of people, it might be like, so you're telling me that I didn't have to drive this whole time, and it might be good news too. So
that's true. Just got to make them think outside the box for sure. All right, did you guys learn something new?
I did, and I see our board chair put a comment in there for us to send you some grant cards that you could pass out to people. Would you
Absolutely.
like
Please
that?
do.
Okay, I will get some out to you. Thank you. I did learn a lot. Thank you, Jill. And this is my second time taking it. I learned more.
You relearn. But like I said, so if you guys know, like if somebody shouldn't be driving and you know they shouldn't be driving, that self-report state, that carries a lot of weight too. You know, and everybody goes, well, I didn't know that. Nobody else knows that. I'm like, no, but you need to do the right thing. So.
Yeah, that form was great, and that reinstatement fee now is very, being effective since January. That's a big one too.
Yes. Yes. So I know you guys work just across the board, right? With age-wise with everybody.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
perfect. Well, thank you so much. Does anybody else have any questions for Jill?
Thanks, Jill. This was really helpful. My name's Dave Appel, and I work out at the city of Lakewood, and I'm their resource person for older adults out of the Clement Center. And I get a lot of people with these kinds of questions, a lot of family members that are looking for people like you, because sending them to the doc is only the first step. And yeah, I get people who, even when they get their licenses revoked, are still going to get in the car because they still have the keys in their hand.
Yes.
So that's why this conversation and having Dr. Mack and having the other transportation options out there is really important. That's that other tool. So I really appreciate your information, and knowing about the eye exam for 80-year-olds plus, that's a new one for me. So I really appreciate getting that.
Well, yeah, and I'm sorry, if you go on to the DMV, everything comes by forms, and just look, it's like, eye exam for over 80, and it's a really simple form to sign, but that's a new thing. That's an important one. But yeah, nice to meet you. And yeah, most people, and I need to tell everybody, there's a lot of doctors that don't understand this either, you guys.
Oh yeah.
Well, my doctor didn't tell me this. And I'm like, yeah, because doctors used to be hands off about driving, and now doctors were afraid they were going to be liable if they said you could drive and something bad happened. Now it's the opposite. Now, if they feel that you're unsafe to drive and do nothing about it, then they can be held liable. So the whole doctor perspective has changed. And yeah, we just want to keep everybody safe. And when it's time to retire, it's time to retire. So Dave, my email is at the end. Feel free to send me an email and I'll get you some brochures.
I absolutely will. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll look you up online for sure.
Absolutely. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you guys too. Thank you guys for having this. This was really good. I mean, the Alzheimer's thing was a wonderful refresher for me, quite frankly. And coupling it with Jill, that was really nice. I really appreciate this.
Yay, happy to hear that.
Yay!
Thank you so much. Okay, well, thank you so much to all of our speakers. Now we're gonna move on to community updates. So we're gonna open up the floor, and if anybody wants to share anything they have going on in their community, any calls to action, this would be your time and the floor is yours. You guys can unmute, and we'd love to hear from everybody.
I'll chime in with something exciting here in Lone Tree. I'm Robin Skirto, and I work here at the Lone Tree Art Center. We have been having Spark Alliance programming for those with memory loss and their caregivers for several years now. And on the 25th, we have kind of a new twist to the Spark programming coming up, where we have a session for caregivers. And this is going to focus on a gentleman from the Alzheimer's Association. So one of Brenda's colleagues, Ralph Patrick, will be coming. He'll be facilitating a presentation for caregivers about behaviors and communication. And then we partnered that with a photographer, an artist that lives here in Lone Tree and believes in the great work that we do for seniors. And he's going to facilitate a session using photography and art to kind of walk these caregivers through conversations that they can have with those seniors that are living with them, just so that they can, have some meaningful dialogue and conversation. And that'll be using pictures. It could be just a photo in a newspaper, something that's laying around their house, but just a way to engage and get them back being a little more social.
That sounds great, Robin. Do you have a flyer or something that we could share? We'd love to share it out if you'd
I
like us
do
to.
have a flyer, and let me see if I can grab that and put it.
Sure.
Actually, I'll put a link to the registration on our website. I'll put that link
Okay.
in the. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I found it as well on your website. So we will be happy to share that. Anybody else?
Hey, Robin, I'm a Lone Tree girl, so if I can help you, you just let me know. I'm right around the corner.
I love when community comes together.
Yeah,
That's great.
wonderful. And
I
Jill,
love
was that you?
Yes, that was me.
Okay, wonderful.
That's
So I
great.
have done a couple presentations, like the Lone Tree Senior Association, some of those kind of
Oh, the
things.
Living and
Your name
Aging
doesn't-
Well?
Your name doesn't sound familiar. So I will remember it now.
Wonderful.
Yay.
Well, Dr. Mack, thank you for having me on. I hope I gave you some tidbits of information.
Lots of it. Thank you. And we actually record our meetings, so we will have this posted. So if anybody wasn't able to make it, we will have it available on our website.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, thank
Feel
you so
free to
much.
send it. Yeah, and if you have any questions, DMV is kind of a convoluted system. So if you have any questions, just send folks my way. And there's nothing easy about maneuvering through it.
Definitely. When you mentioned the forms, I'm like, if it's anything like the court forms and all those, they're, digging the
Hard.
needle through haystack.
That is, and you know what? I will not let the doctors send them. I make the doctors send them back to me. I look at them and make sure that they're filled out correctly. And then I send them to the DMV, because if, they can just not check one box and it just goes right back to the MD's office and they have no idea that it's not done. And yeah, very
Sounds very
particular.
familiar.
Yes.
Well,
Right.
perfect. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Have a good day, you guys.
Thank you. You too. And I'm going to pass it off to Colleen now.
Colleen remembers to unmute this time. This has been great. Thank you, Diana, and thank you all for attending. And a special thank you to our presenters. That's all we have for you today. So we're going to wrap up the meeting, and we hope to see you all next month at our member meeting on August 1st from 1:30 to 3. And you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.